All right, we're going to talk about composition of functions in this lesson. So you've talked about now addition, subtraction, multiplication. You have expanded your binomials with your Pascal's triangle. So now there's compositions of functions. So that is essentially combining two or more functions to create a new function where you're going to substitute one function into another function. So first, you don't need to write this down, but just to remind you, if you have a function like f of x equals 3x minus 7, and I want to find f of 2, we talked about this already in this unit, but just to remind you, you take this lovely little 2 and plug it in for x, do 3 times 2 minus 7. 3 times 2 is 6, minus 7 is negative 1. Now, instead of plugging in a number, we're going to plug in another function. So the composition of a function g with a function f creates this new function where I take g of x and I'm going to plug in f of x. So because it's inside my parentheses, like this one here, my 2 is inside the parentheses, so I plug the 2 in. My f is inside the parentheses, so you're going to plug the f into g. And it has a notation of, and I know this is a little bit smudgy here, this is an open circle, g, a little open circle f. This says you're going to use g and input f. This is g of f of x, which is different than f of g of x. This is not the same as this. This one says start with g, plug f into g. This one says start with f and plug g into f, okay, which is different. So to write our new rule, you'll take whichever one is second, which is the one that's in your parentheses, it's second, and plug it into the first one. And then do whatever math you need to simplify, whether it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, distributing. Maybe you have an exponent you need to do FOIL, something like that. Whatever you need to do. Simplify. You also then can evaluate. So instead of finding g of f of x, I could find g of f of 2. Well, you would start by finding what f of 2 is by plugging 2 into f. You get an answer. It's negative 1. Then you're going to take g of that answer, negative 1, and plug that into g, get your new answer. So the output of f of x becomes the input of g of x. The output we got here becomes the input you input into the new one. What's important is you knowing which one you're starting with. And like I said, it's the second function in the problem. This one is second, I'm going to start with f. This one is second, I'm going to start with f. So in 7, 8, 9, and 10, we're going to have to do f of g of 2. So that means I'm going to take f of g of 2. So I'm going to start with g of 2. So I'm going to look at g. G of 2 is 3. So now I'm going to take f of 3. So f of 3 is 4. So f of g of 2 is 4. So f of 3, I'm going to start with that one. Start with the middle, start with the second one. F of 3 is 4. Now I'm going to do g of 4. G of 4 is 3. G of f of 1 means I'm going to start with f of 1. Start with the second one with that number. F of 1 is 2. Now I'm going to use g of that. G of 2 is 3. F of g of 6, so g of 6 first. G of 6 is 1. Now f of 1 is 2. Okay, now let's go on to some actual functions. We have 3 functions up here. If you can't read them, this one says x plus 7. This is x squared minus 3x plus 6. And this is 4x minus 1. Making sure you're using the correct functions. This is your f, your g, your h. So make sure you use the one it tells you to use. In this first one, we are going to evaluate like we did before. So we're going to start with g of 2. So I'm going to use the g function, and I'm going to plug 2 in that function. So 2 squared minus 3 times 2 plus 6. And I don't need you to work that all out. Once you have this out like this, you can just type that straight into your calculator, and you should be able to get your answer. So 2 squared minus 3 times 2 plus 6. Noticing I did put this one in parentheses. Whenever you're squaring something, make sure you put the thing you're squaring in parentheses, the squared on the outside. When we do that, we get 4. So now we're going to take h of 4. H function is here. So I'm going to do 4 times 4 minus 1. And similarly, I do not need you to actually do that, although this one's relatively simple, but you could just type it in your calculator. 4 times 4 minus 1 would give you 15. The answer is 15. H of f of negative 10. So I'm going to start with f of negative 10. So I'm going to use my f function and plug in a negative 10 plus 7. Either this one in your head because it's easy, or in a calculator if you're not sure, is negative 3. Now I'm going to do h of negative 3. So I'm going to use my h function. Is 4 times negative 3 minus 1. Once again, I don't need you to be able to do that one on your own, but if you can, perfect. Otherwise, calculator. It's your best friend. You get negative 13. Okay, now let's talk about how to perform with a new rule using a function. So instead of plugging in a number and then plugging in the new number, you're going to just take the function you have, g of x. I'm going to take g of x right here. And I'm going to plug this into h of x. So I'm going to have my 4x minus 1. And where I see an x, so 4 parentheses, plug in g of x. X squared minus 3x plus 6 minus 1. So this is the 4. This was my x. That's now g of x minus 1. When you plug in a new function, you always need to put the function in parentheses. So when you take out x, parentheses, plug in your new function. Now just do what math you need to do. In this problem, I have a 4 times parentheses, so I'm going to distribute. 4x squared minus 12x plus 24. I'm not distributing to that minus 1, so just bring it down. I have some like terms here, so I have 4x squared minus 12x. 24 minus 1 is 23. There's your new answer. Next one, g of h of x. So we're going to use the g function, x squared minus 3x plus 6. And everywhere I see an x, everywhere, I'm going to plug h into that. So when I take out my x and plug in my function, I'm put in parentheses. Squared minus 3, take out x, plug in a new function in parentheses, plus a 6. This function that's being squared, you need to remember, is take that function times itself. So FOIL, 4 times 4 is 16, x times x is x squared. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4x. Negative 1 times 4x is negative 4x. And negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. Now I'm going to continue with up here. I have a negative 3 I'm distributing, so negative 3 times 4x is minus 12x, and negative 3 times negative 1 is a positive 3. Nothing to do with your 6, just bring it on down. Once you have done all your foiling and or distributing, then you move on to just combine like terms. I have a 16x squared with no like terms. I have a minus 4, a minus 4, and a minus 12, all with x's on them. So negative 4 minus 12 would be negative 20x. And you have a 1, a 3, and a 6 would give you 10. There's your new function. So if you have a number right here, you should have a number here. But if you have a variable here, you should have some variables here. How many you have just depends on your problem. Okay, we have h of f of g. We're going to start with the innermost. G of x gets plugged into f of x. So I'm going to take x plus 7 and plug in for x, g of x. So x squared minus 3x plus 6 plus 7. Now this one in front of my parentheses is a 1. So that doesn't change the parentheses. So really you can get rid of those parentheses and just combine like terms. X squared minus 3x, 6 and 7 is 13. Now I'm going to take that and plug it into h. So 4x minus 1, I'm going to replace this x with what I have up here. So 4 parentheses, x squared minus 3x plus 13 minus 1 not in the parentheses. Distributing 4x squared minus 12x plus 4 times 13, which would give you 52, minus 1. Combining those like terms, you have 4x squared minus 12x plus 51. That's your final answer. So you start with the innermost and work your way out. Take the innermost and plug it into the outer one. And then in this case, you had then that and plug it into the outer one. Now, we also can use function compositions with variable inputs. So you're going to do a composition as before, but you're inputting whatever it is that you're having for your variable expression. So I have my two functions, f of x and g of x. I want to do f of g of 7n plus 9. So I'm going to plug 7n plus 9 in for g. So I have my 3, take out my x and plug in 7n plus 9 minus 7. I'm going to distribute to get 21n plus 27 minus 7, which is 21n plus 20. Now I'm going to plug that in for f. So I'm going to do 2, 21n plus 20 plus 1. Once again, I just have some distributing. 21 times 2 is 42n plus 40 plus 1. Combining those like terms, 42n plus 41 is your final answer. Once again, you had variables here, so you should have variables in your answer. Next one. We're going to do h of p of x minus 3. Here are your two functions. So we're going to take our x minus 3 and plug it in for p. So 5 parentheses, plug in x minus 3. Distributing. 5 times x is 5x minus 15. Now we're going to take that and plug it in for h. So n squared, so I'm going to take my 5x minus 15 and I'm going to square it, plus 3 times n, so I'm going to plug in parentheses 5x minus 15. The squared part, remember, is taking it by itself, so make sure you have it twice. 5 times 5 is 25, is going to give you x squared. 5 times negative 15 would give you a negative 75x. Negative 15 times 5x is also a negative 75x. And then a negative 15 times a negative 15, two negatives give you a positive 225. That's what I got from the squaring part. Now I need to distribute this 3. 3 times 5x is 15x. 3 times negative 15 will give you a negative 45. And combine like terms. 25x squared with no like terms. Combine all those x's. Negative 75 minus 75 plus 15 is going to give you minus 135x. And then your constants of 225 minus 45 is going to give you 180. And our last problem, g of f of 4a. So we're going to start with function f, which is negative parentheses, plug in 4a, squared on the outside, minus 1. Make sure that negative is out front. The only thing you're squaring is whatever you're plugging in for a, which happens to be 4a. So I'm going to keep that negative. I'm going to square 4a. So 4a times 4a, 4 times 4 is 16. A times a is a squared, minus 1. No like terms with that. Move on. Take that now and plug it in for g. So negative 3 parentheses, plug in negative 16a squared minus 1, and then a minus 4. And distribute your negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 16, two negatives are going to give you a positive 48a squared. Negative 3 times negative 1 will give you a positive 3. Bring down your minus 4. Combine some like terms to get 48a squared minus 1 as your final answer.